3 conflicting statements. Listen, Joshua's in a lot of hot water, you guys. But here's the problem. Anytime as an investigator, we're talking to people who may have witnessed a crime and then things start contradicting what they told us before, or may have got information from someone else that contradicts what they said, or we've seen video footage that contradicts or evidence that contradicts the statement, and then we bring you back in the office for another conversation, and then you start to change your statements a little bit. What did he say? Let's look at his 3 conflicting statements, because initially it came off very innocent. And the problem, you guys, is that when investigators are talking to a witness before they become a person of interest or before they become a suspect, you start seeing the changes in their attitude, you see the changes in their story, and then they lawyer up. This is why we don't like to share all of our cards at first, because the key thing is that suspects don't really know all the information that you have. So because of that, they have to tread lightly. They have to make sure they have a solid story and stick to it. But once you tell the story, you got to tell it again. And the problem with people who lie is that they can't keep up with the lie that they told. And they're unable to go back and backtrack because they don't know what evidence that we already have against them. And I think this is what happened with Joshua. So let's dive into his 3 conflicting statements. Number 1, he stated that he vomited, he saw her standing, and assumed she left. Now, this first version is very interesting because it goes to mention that, hey, we're both in the water together. She struggled. I tried to pull her out. We were doing okay. I vomited. Next, you know, I didn't see her anymore. Okay. And, you know, essentially, it's not that it could be believable or not believable. This is the person's statement. It becomes an issue when the statement changes. And here's version 2. Version 2, he's saying he felt sick. He left the water and last saw her knee deep in the water, meaning that he gave the impression that he was already cleared on the water. He was sitting on the bench chair, but he witnessed her in the water still as he passed out on the chair. And then lastly, the third version, he saw her walking along the shore before he passed out. And this is important. He's giving 3 different scenarios. 1, he's in the water. He's holding her. He's talking about how they struggled. Okay, the waves were really wicked. They were hitting them. They almost drowned, but he saved her. And as they're walking out, they're knee deep in the water. He asked her, "Are you okay?" But she doesn't say anything. But he describes her able to stand up on her own, and she's walking. Okay, but she's not speaking. Then what does he say? He says, "I couldn't hear her because I started vomiting seawater." Okay. And then he said after he finished vomiting, he looked up and she was gone. And he told them that he just assumed that she made it back to her place. He gets off the beach, he gets on the chair, and he goes to sleep. Okay, I'm gonna tell you why that story is important. Version number 2, he's saying he felt sick. He left her in the water. He gets out the water, okay? He gets on the beach chair. He lays down. He's so drunk. He falls asleep. The last thing he remembers is she's dancing around in the water, okay? Knee deep. This is the last thing that he said he remembered, okay? Very interesting. All right. Number 3, this version, he sees her walking along the shore, meaning that she's out of danger. She's free and clear, and he is not sober. So he decides to lay down and he passes out for those 4 hours that are unaccounted for. What's interesting about his conflicting statements, outside the fact that they're conflicting and they make him look guilty, what's interesting about this, you guys, is when you're investigating criminals, they all have the same techniques, every last one of them, but their IQ determines how well they use said technique, how crafty they are, how much time they have to cultivate an elaborate explanation and justification as to what happened, why it happened, and where it happened, and who it happened to, and why are they there. See, in this unique problem that Joshua finds himself in, is that Joshua is present from the beginning and likely to the end. Joshua knows that he has to admit that he was there at some point in time. He cannot escape from that reality. So what I've noticed that criminals do, and not saying he's guilty, but he's looking real guilty-ish, all right? And what do I mean by that? This is a technique that they use. They have to admit that they're present. They have to admit that they're involved. But what they try to do is alienate themselves away from the actual negative aspects of the crime, okay? What does that look like? What does he do? He paints himself as a hero who was able to do just enough to see her live. But then he justifies why he doesn't know where she went afterwards. You see that in each and every scenario that he provides. He provides two things. One, that he remembers her being alive before he went to sleep. That is so key, you guys. That's so key. Number two, he also acknowledges a potential danger outside of himself, okay? Meaning that he had nothing to do with the potential outcome. What's the first scenario? Listen, I helped her up and I risked my life to save her. And as I was struggling because I risked my life to save her, as I'm trying to recover, I look up and she's gone. And he tells them that I just assumed she went home. In the second scenario, he talks about how he's already out of the water and that she was in good condition, but he wasn't in good condition. And so he went to sleep. He's painting the picture that she was still in danger, removing himself out of any form of consequence, that he was never the danger element. He's always in each scenario separating himself from an element of danger, meaning that I saw her alive and well, but the waves were strong that night. Always opening the possibility that the ocean was the one that got her, okay? And that he always justifies what the missing time frame, 4 hours. It always ends with him going to sleep, giving him any type of alibi, his best alibi is that I was sleeping. I don't know what happened in those 4 hours, but the last thing I remember is that she was alive and well. His third scenario is the most interesting one because now this is a red herring. Listen, I was jacked up. We were all out the water. And last thing I remember, I'm laid out drunk, throwing up, and I'm on the bench. I'm on the seat, I'm on the beach chair. And she's walking off into the sunset under the night moonlight, okay? She was okay. Last time I saw her, every scenario, he always, his last known encounter, she's alive. He admits to having a level of intimacy with her. He can't lie about that. Why? Because he knows that that happened. Anything that he's agreeing to happening, he's truthful about. But he distanced himself away from anything potentially negative. And then he's justifying and trying to give accountability for why these 4 hours took place, and he's not present. To me, anytime you have a suspect who is very diligent at trying to make up for lost time, trying to have an alibi for lost time, and it's so convenient, that's a red flag. His explanations are too perfect. They don't make sense, but they're plausible. Where did he go wrong? The 3 conflicting statements, you guys. The question is, when did the statements change? Obviously, Joshua got a hold of updated information. And when he gets updated information, he then has to tweak his story a little bit. Why? He has to tweak it to account for things that were unforeseen in the beginning. I'm not saying he's guilty, but he looks real guilty-ish. The questions he refused to answer. Well, this is interesting. Now, obviously, the heat is on, okay? He's feeling the tension. And listen, he's a man. So of course, with this, he's already painted as guilty in the media. Okay, people are already going to assume that he did it. And again, like I said, we look at the avenues of crime. There's a lot of different possible scenarios. Okay, so we got to be honest. But in the midst of that, he's feeling the pressure, you guys. He gets an attorney, and the attorney consults him on what not to answer. Some questions they said he answered before, and I think they question him again on some details because they may have investigated other people who may have witnesses, maybe his friend, and maybe things aren't lining up. And so he's feeling the pressure. And obviously, we have to see the actual interview, right? We know that they recorded the interview. I'd be curious to see his mannerisms. Again, I tell you guys all the time, like, you look at the eye contact, the body language, you know, and as things start to change and new evidence gets introduced to him as a witness, now person of interest, you start seeing things change. Like, damn, did they find that out? Okay, things aren't adding up. So what are the questions that he refused to answer? Let's go over them. How can we verify that everything you said corresponds with the truth? Number 2, could you tell us what you told your friend Carter Joseph when he asked about the missing girl, Konanki? What do you think about Sudiksha's disappearance? Did young Sudiksha know how to swim or not? Do you remember if young Sudiksha made any gestures or cries while she was in the sea? Did you inform the authorities or the hotel what happened to you and the girl on the beach? Did you tell your friend what happened with you and the girl on the beach? How do you feel about this situation? And he leads with, listen, my lawyer told me not to respond to these questions. These are great questions, okay? And I'm not mad that he has an attorney, but I've always been the type of person that if you're cooperating with the police, then why can't you answer certain questions unless you feel like these questions will incriminate you, right? So you want to have an attorney that makes sure they consult you properly to ensure that you're not being railroaded or taken advantage of. But these questions aren't incriminating, right? They kind of give or paint a better picture of the situation. But 2 things stood out to me about these questions. 2 of them were about what his friends said or what he said to his friends, which leads me to believe that the friend may have given a different account of a situation that maybe Joshua gave, and now has created some additional conflict along with the 3 conflicting statements, okay? One could argue his attorney would probably say he's intoxicated. He can't really remember. I agree with that, but these 3 scenarios that he gave are all different. One, he's in the chair watching her in the water. The other one, she's off walking off into the beach sunset, okay, going back to her hotel. And the other one, he's saving her and walking through the water, treading the water, throwing up, and then she disappears. These are all 3 different scenarios, okay? So this is getting interesting. Case assignment. If you were an investigator on this case, what questions would you have asked Joshua and why? Share your response below. Good luck.